Greetings, dear Earthlings. You are listening to Horror Nerds at Church, a ridiculously queer podcast where I take a deep dive into a horror film and talk about how it connects to queerness, religion, and theology. My name is Pace Warfield, and today I am Charles Bishop Wayland, the billionaire head of the Wayland Corporation and its subsidiary, Wayland Industries, who organizes this doomed expedition into the Arctic because I am a billionaire and have nothing better to do than put other people's lives at risk for my benefit.
Now I want to change mine, but I won't. I'm Pastor Emily, and I am the broken eardrums from rapid ascent and descent up and down thousands of feet.
Oof.
Yeah, there's no way my eardrums make that, especially the ascent. They're going up so fast. It's bad. But I almost said I am the predator that kills you and saves Earth massive amounts of money and resources.
Right? Yay for being on the side of eco-justice predator.
Follow us on Patreon at patreon.com/horrornerdsatchurch. It starts at only $5 to sign up, which is way less than the cost that Pace paid out for this doomed from the start adventure. And if you join Patreon this month, we are dropping the Predator movie commentary. Our Boo Tube is on Ahsoka, the show, which we are recording next week, this Friday, I don't know, sometime. And Rogue One, which I love that episode. It is well worth a listen for I might have to re-listen to it just to see what we said, because we recorded it 6 months ago plus.
Yeah, something like that.
Plus, if you join, and Rogue One is for our horror buff tier, so that starts at $10 a month, which is also infinitely less than Pace paid for this doomed adventure. Yeah, but once you sign up, you get access to everything, past and present and future, until you stop sending us money. At which point you stop getting access to it, because that's how transactions work, and we would like someday for this podcast to be financially sustainable in some capacity. Yeah. Anyway. So, Pace, how you doing?
I'm okay. I am well. It's like allergy season here, so I've been feeling sick the past few days with allergies / maybe a cold. Taking a COVID test later this afternoon just to be on the safe side there, but I'm pretty sure it's not COVID. This just is my seasonal feeling miserable for a few weeks. That happens every year.
We've had more allergy stuff here too, and not just the cats, but allergy season came early, and I think it's probably going to stay late more and more frequently.
Yep, that's what they keep saying. Lucky us. Yay, climate change. Yay, Bishop Wayland, or whatever his name is. Charles Bishop Wayland. Beyond that, I've been... Well, first, how have you been doing?
I've been good. We had a lovely break so that I could go visit people that I care about a lot, and that was wonderful. It was a long time away, which was a little tough, but it was really good and important visits, and I got to preach on Easter, Trans Day of Visibility, for both, which is an exciting thing that not enough congregations did. Um, yeah, so settling back into life, and have some projects coming up that are not yet official, but I'm excited to be having things in the work and stuff. Um,
Mm-hmm.
Also, we just re released our first season episode for Nerds at Church, where we introduce our listeners to Horror Nerds at Church, this brand new spin off podcast. And as I was like going through it to clean it up for YouTube and get captions and stuff, it was just delightful. It was such a fun conversation, and then to hear like the different ideas that we were just kind of throwing out about Horror Nerds at Church, and then be like, well, we did do a Twilight season, we did do this, we
Mm-hmm.
did do is just, it's really cool to see how far the podcast has come since that first introductory season and all of that stuff. So
Mm.
yeah.
And likewise, Nerds at Church too, because that was your first
Mm-hmm.
season of being Nerds at Church, and
Yeah.
now you're not even doing lectionary stuff anymore. I mean, you're still tying it into the Bible, but
Yeah. Amazing.
so that's cool. Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
but yeah, that I went back and re-listened to the episode, and it was fun, and stuff. And I just love how many times Emily would say things like, "I don't really like horror. I don't
I
want
know
to
that was
watch horror. It's not
I
my
was
genre
listening
to
to that
watch."
and I was like, ah, if only I had known. It's probably
Yep.
good I didn't. Yeah.
So, but yeah, definitely
Look at
check
me
that out.
now.
Yep, I'll
Sorry.
link the YouTube in our show notes for that, so y'all can check it out on YouTube because it has captions there. So that's cool.
Yep, yep.
Um,
That's why we do it that way.
have you been
Mm-hmm.
watching anything fun? Reading anything fun?
Ooh. So, yes. Um, I am rereading the Graceling series by Kristen Kishore. It's one of my super comfort reads. I just love Graceling, and then I really like Fire and Bitter Blue. This will be my first time rereading all five that are out now since Sea Sparrow came out. So um, I'm having fun reading those, and started reading On the Mystery by Catherine Keller for complicated reasons that friend of the podcast River Needham would be delighted by, because pretty much any reason to get anybody to read Process Theology, I think she's delighted by. Um, and I've been watching a
Also,
bunch. Mm-hmm.
I was just gonna say, but also Catherine Keller is just an incredibly amazing, if sometimes dense. One, the mystery isn't as dense as some of her other works, but just love her theology and her writing style. It's very poetic. So
Yeah, part of why this is the book is the poetry of it. So having finished the prologue, having finished the prologue, and now being in the actual chapters, um, yeah, I really like her writing style as well. Um, in terms of watching stuff, I am getting ready to give in and watch the Three Body Problem.
ah, I haven't watched it
Yep.
yet either, but a friend of the podcast, Susanna Porter, has been encouraging all of us to watch it for like 2 weeks now. So
Yeah, she's maybe in the midst of a deep existential crisis, primarily from like reading the synopses of the books. But yeah, so can't wait. It feels particularly. I think it is connected to our Nerds at Church episode on astrophysics with Dr. Katie Mack, because her book is called "The End of Everything, Astrophysically Speaking." So I have a sneaking suspicion that it is related. Um,
yeah,
but
and I
yeah.
have a sneaking suspicion it's related to a HNAC episode called Everything Everywhere All at Once, which gave me an existential
Ooh.
crisis the first time I watched it. So we'll see.
Oh, I didn't know that. Okay. Yeah, I think Susanna described it as The Expanse plus Hunger Games. Maybe? Like if those two had a baby?
That'd be a very
Or
interesting
maybe that
baby.
was just one of the theories of the universe. was the Expanse and Hunger Games version. But yeah, so in the meantime, I've been continuing our Doctor Who adventure, um,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
and am about to start. I'm on the second Doctor, the 10th Doctor, Torchwood, and soon I will start the Sarah Jane Adventures, which I've never seen. So I'm excited about those. I think they should be a fun additional adventure.
Mm-hmm.
But watching that, rewatching Ahsoka, watching Obi-Wan Kenobi, which is cool so far.
I love Obi-Wan Kenobi. I feel like that and
I'm a
Ahsoka
much
are tied
more
as my favorite shows. The
that
Star
and what?
Wars. Obi-Wan and Ahsoka are probably tied as my favorite Star Wars shows right now
Ooh,
of all the ones I've
nice.
seen. And I've seen all of
I'm
them, so.
yeah, I'm really enjoying it. I was hesitant at first, obviously. It is one of the few Star Wars things that I am watching specifically for this podcast for the first time. Um, so that's extra places where people get to take shots. Um, but yeah, I'm excited about it. It's really cool. I really like it. I love seeing young Leia, and I really
Right.
like that Ewan McGregor is back and gets to be Obi-Wan Kenobi because he is, I think, my favorite iteration of Obi-Wan. And so to have
Mm-hmm.
him back and in this like different place of like he hadn't actually been practicing being a Jedi. He had been giving up on
Yep.
that and now he's, thrown back in and
Yep. Just don't go back and listen to our. If you want to avoid spoilers, Emily, as you're watching it for the
mhm.
first time, do not go back and listen to our interview with Claudia Gray because she talks about the end of that. So
I promise not to because I don't usually go back and re-listen to our episodes like that. So I think I can
it's true.
successfully promise
It's
not
true.
to do that. Yeah.
Yeah.
What about you?
I
What are you
I love
watching or
Obi-Wan,
reading?
just to say that as well. And also young Leia is amazing in that show. But
Right.
what I've been watching, so in my our Doctor Who watch through, I have kind of not watched anything for last week. And in part that's because
Mm.
my glasses broke and
Yeah.
they kept breaking and breaking more and more beyond the to the point where now they're not even like for a while I was able to like kind of have them glued slash taped together enough that I could use it for driving, but that's the only thing I could
Mm-hmm.
use it for now. But now they're even broken beyond that. But I just got news that my contacts have arrived, so I can
Ooh.
finally see after this episode. I'll finally be able to see for the first time. But anyway, yeah. So I haven't been watching much
But you're
TV
not
and stuff.
really very far behind where you should be, where
Yeah.
like you
So
personally should be for your
yeah.
goals.
So like I am in Doctor Who where I left off is I am in season 5 of the new Who, which is the 11th Doctor and Amy.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm watching that. It's the first 11th Doctor season.
Mm.
Uh, in old Who, I'm just at the beginning of the third Doctor's tenure, and the third Doctor is historically the hardest for me to watch through because I'm not
Mm.
as much of a fan of the third Doctor as the other
Huh.
Doctors. But we'll see how I get through it this time. And
Yeah.
then,
I'm having trouble with the second Doctor, but I think it's mostly because so many of the episodes are animated or
yeah.
audio that I haven't gotten to like really get to know the third Doctor or the second Doctor. But I think that changes. That'll change once I get like they're fun to watch, but they're not
Mm-hmm.
as engaging because they're not even like the fancy animated shows, right? Like it
Yeah.
is really
They're like,
just to give you the basics.
yeah. The second Doctor, when I first watched Classic Who, was my favorite of the classic Doctors.
Mm.
The third Doctor was my least favorite. No, the fifth Doctor is my least favorite. The third was a close second. But now I've watched Doctor Who so many times that like all of them are kind of my favorite, and I have like least
Mm.
favorite pieces of all of them and stuff. But the third Doctor is lasted for 5 seasons, so he's the second longest incarnation of the Doctor for like if you go by
Oh.
seasons, the fourth Doctor is the longest, and because it's
Huh.
like a big chunk of like third Doctor back to back to back. It's always been a little bit, and it's like early 70s. Um, so that includes all the writing, all the cinematography and
Yeah.
special effects and stuff. It was just always hard for me to get through him, but we'll see.
Well,
Um,
now you can break it up at least. It's broken up, so
yep.
it's not just Third Doctor the whole time. Yeah.
So, and then also finish season 3 of Torchwood, which is Children of
Mm,
Earth, and finish season 3 of Sarah Jane Adventures. So I have 2
nice.
more seasons left of Sarah Jane Adventures and 1 more season left of Torchwood.
Which I think
So
is the worst. Like I know you said the first season of Torchwood is bad. I think the fourth. I heard. I mean it's been a while, but like the fourth season of Torchwood is a bit questionable. I'm at the point in Torchwood where Martha's about to come back, so I'm excited for Martha to make her appearance.
I actually like season 4 of Torchwood. Season 3 is depressing, but season 4 I
Mm,
like. But
yeah.
anyway, we'll see. I've only ever watched season 4 once when it was airing, so we'll see how I think about it on a rewatch.
Mm,
But
interesting.
like like I said, I haven't been watching much TV because of the reasons of my glasses and
Mm-hmm.
all that, but I have been reading a lot. So I
Mm,
am on my last book of phase 2 of the Star Wars High Republic series, and I keep talking about how much I love this series, and I cannot
mm-hmm.
go on and on about how much I love it enough. It is
Mm,
one of the few, like, Libby is a miracle for me because I just love to get books and audiobooks through Libby for free. But Star Wars High Republic is one of the series that after I read it on Libby, I still go out and purchase the books because I want to show my support to the authors and to, because like it is Star Wars, but it's like so many queer characters, so diverse.
mm,
It's like all the things that Star Wars could have been and should have been, and finally is now that we're getting in this book series. And so I just want to throw my support at that series because there are all those naysayers, old time Star Wars fans, and I say fans in air quotes because fuck them, who hate it because of how diverse it is and saying how it's ruining Star Wars and stuff. But it's not. It's so good.
yeah. Speaking of which, I forgot that we haven't recorded in long enough that I finished Star Wars Return of the Jedi from a certain point of view.
Yay!
So now we can actually record that episode too.
That might need to be our May 4th episode because all the people I've asked to
Ooh.
be guests for that episodes and that you've asked have either not responded or declined. So, um,
Yeah, it's true. It could be a fun May 4th episode though.
it's a busy time of year for folks though, so I
It's
get it.
true.
Um, so I've been doing that. I've picked up with my reread of the Animorphs series, which I had put on pause
Mm.
for like 6 months or so, just because I got interested in other things. So I'm reading through those. I'm in like
Mm.
book 37, I think is the one I'm starting, and there are
Yeah.
55 books. So I'm like
Okay.
a little over half, well, a lot over halfway, kind of like 2/3 of the way through, and enjoying that. And the last thing I'm doing is I am just about finished chapter 3 of my dissertation, which is a chapter on method, and which means the next 3 chapters are all on Luther's Genesis lectures themselves, which I'm really excited to get to. So, in
Mm.
celebration of that, I've been rereading the Genesis lectures. For those of you who don't know, he the Genesis lectures are probably his magnum opus if we define that in terms of length and time and energy that he put into those, because he delivered them over 10 years. It is the first
Wow.
8 volumes of the American edition of Luther's works. So thousands of pages worth of, probably about 2,000 pages worth of lectures divided across 8 volumes. So it's a very monumental undertaking that he did, and very monumental
Mm.
undertaking to read them all. And so I'm
Mm-hmm.
limiting myself to 40 pages of those a day. And so far, that's helping because then I can savor it a little bit more and pace myself as opposed to um, getting lost in it or all those things. So that's what I've been reading.
Interesting. Huh. Okay. That's You and
Yeah.
River both with all of your reading, where you're like, just 40 pages of this dense theological thing per day. And I'm like, I made 40 pages of young adult fiction. And that's just like the one thing that you read, right? Like, ugh.
Yeah, I tend to read 2 or 3 books at a time.
I mean,
So
I
like,
read
I'm
multiple
limiting
books at a
myself
time
to
too.
yeah, I'm limiting myself to 40 pages of Luther, so that way I can still enjoy some of the other books I read without getting swamped into Luther.
Yeah, but like, I used to think that I was a pretty fast reader. Not the fastest, because Stephanie was my college roommate, but pretty fast. And now I'm like so slow compared to all my friends. I'm like fancy academic
College roommate
friends.
plus. I'll delete out the podcast, but college roommate
I know.
plus.
That's fine.
Um,
College roommate, ex, best friend. To fulfill all stereotypes.
yeah, I don't. I feel like I can't even compare to River. I sent to our friends a Zoom, not Zoom, TikTok. I'll see if I can find it to link in the show notes of this person who's like, you read a book a week? That's really, you read a book a month? That's really fast. And the person is like, well, I have a friend that reads a book a week. And that person has a friend that reads a book a day. And it was just, and the person's like, how is that possible? Can I learn this power? And the person says, not from a Jedi. So I love that TikTok. I'll link in the show notes. But yeah,
That's
I think
fantastic.
River even beats me for reading
Yeah, but the
speed.
both of you, oof, it's ridiculous.
Yeah, there was a while when I was reading a theological book a day for my dissertation, but slowing that down now that I'm getting to Genesis because I want to savor
And because you deserve to have other things in your life and not burn out again.
whatever that means.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
Sure.
Uh-huh. 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 I see you. I mean, I don't because your video sucks, but I see you, face.
Yeah,
Anyway.
yeah. Anyway, transitioning to Alien versus Predator because we don't do awkward translations at all. This is AVP, Alien versus Predator is the name of this movie, directed by Paul W.S. Anderson. And I usually love his shit. He did Event Horizon, which we've covered on this podcast before. He's done Resident Evil franchise, directed many of them, and wrote pretty much all of them. Um,
Mm.
but this one is an exception to stuff I like of his. We'll talk about that later. But came out in 2004, which was
Which
also
was
the year.
apparently a great year for me in terms of movies. I can't wait.
Yes, so Shrek 2 came out this year. Harry Potter and the Prisoner of Azkaban. Spider-Man 2, the Tobey Maguire trilogy, Sam Raimi version. Sam Raimi, who directed Doctor Strange and the
Mm.
Multiverse of Madness, which we covered. Incredibles. The Day After Tomorrow. Ocean's
I think
12.
I've seen that one.
Iron Jawed Angels, the HBO film about the women's uh,
Suffrage
suffrage.
movement.
That's the word I was thinking of. Women's suffrage movement. Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind, which is a lot of people's favorite movie. I think I hate it. Um,
Yeah.
Disney's Home on the Range.
I don't know if I've heard that one.
Their last animated movie for a long time because then they
Uh,
switched to computer animated. Then they did Ella. No, they did Princess and the Frog, traditionally animated,
mm.
but after that. But anyway, Ella Enchanted, love that movie. Cute little book. If you haven't read the book, I think the book's
Yeah,
much better than the movie, but still love the
I really
movie.
like them both. I read the book after the movie. The movie got me to read the book, and I was like, I love this.
Yeah. Kill Bill Volume 2. One of these days we'll cover the Kill Bill series.
I'm sure we
The
will.
Punisher, the Thomas Jane version. Mean Girls. On Wednesdays we wear pink. The Born Supremacy, one of Emily's favorite franchises. The Polar Express, another of
Which
Emily's
is
favorite movies. I say
terrible,
sarcastically.
terrible, terrible. The worst. The worst. And not just because of the uncanny valley, whatever thing. It is a terrible adaptation of the book. absolutely horrible. Nobody should ever do that. It's awful. And I'm on number
Love
12
it.
out of all of these that I have seen.
National Treasure, the
13.
first one with Nicolas Cage. A Very Long Engagement, which was directed by Jean-Pierre Jeunet, who also directed Alien Resurrection.
I don't know if I know that one.
And then in horror world, we have Butterfly Effect, Secret Window, Dawn of the Dead remake, Scooby-Doo 2, the live action one, Van Helsing, Chronicles of Riddick, M. Night Shyamalan's The Village, which I think is my favorite M. Night Shyamalan movie.
I love that, and I literally just
Me
talked
too.
about it in the episode, the revisited episode of Nerds at Church that just came out with El Dowd, which is the one that comes right after the one with Horror Nerds at Church. And I was like, I think I'm still on a horror kick because this made me think of The Village. That's fantastic.
Love it. Exorcist the Beginning, which we've talked about with TJ Tranchel on our Exorcist episode, and we will watch eventually. Resident Evil Apocalypse, which is written by Paul W.S. Anderson, who is the director of the movie we're talking about today. Shaun of the Dead, The Grudge, Saw, Seed of Chucky. And then on this podcast for movies we've covered, Blade Trinity, which we haven't actually covered, but we covered the first movie with Lenny Duncan, and then we did a movie commentary, the second movie, so we haven't got to the third yet. Passion of the Christ, which is probably the lowest rated movie of any movie we've covered so far on the podcast. And Saved, which was our first live episode, and you can listen to Saved on Patreon. So, you've seen a lot of these movies. I'm proud. Any of the horror ones, though, aside from the ones we've covered?
The Village. I've seen The Village.
Yeah.
And I would argue that the Bourne Supremacy could count as horror.
For sure.
I mean, a lot of these could count, right? Iron Jawed Angels, depending on how you look at it. Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind. Kill Bill, obviously. Mean Girls was horror because it was my middle school, but Polar Express is horror because it's horrible. But yeah. And I know I am very familiar with the Butterfly Effect, but I don't think I actually saw it. Is the tricky part. But so mainly just The Village, which I feel like we've talked. I
feel like we've talked about Shaun of the Dead before, though, so I thought you saw that one, but maybe not. It's the horror comedy about zombies.
Yeah, I don't think I've seen that one. I've seen some of the like scary movie franchise type stuff, but I don't know that I saw Shaun of the Dead.
Cool. Well, when we do a zombie season, that will definitely be one of the ones we cover. My question for you listeners, though, season 7, we've all but decided already what we're going to do, but beyond that, we need another long franchise, and there are so many we could choose from. But if we were to do zombies for that, there are 2 long franchises, and I'm curious which you would want us to cover first. Would you want us to cover the George Romero of the Dead franchise, of which are like 1.5 million films, or would you prefer us to cover the Resident Evil franchise? I love both, so I can't even pick. So I'm really curious what you listeners think, which you would rather have us cover when we get to zombies, which may be season 8, it might not, who knows, but whenever we get to zombies.
Yeah, I've never seen them. I do know that we're watching World War Z at that point, but that's all I know.
And I know
yeah, Susanna mentioned there's one that she and I watched that's like a Valentine's stuff. It's
interesting.
Romantic.
Oh yeah.
Zombie,
I can't.
Something.
I know that one. What is it called? I can't think of it, but yeah, I know that one. I also know a friend of the podcast, Susanna, loves Resident Evil, so I know what her vote would probably be.
Yeah, she just has to vote.
So, anyway, nice. But today we're talking about AVP. When was the first time you seen this movie?
Last week for this episode. What about you? Also, take a shot, folks.
Yep. I watched this. it came out after I was 12, so you can't take a shot for that. But I also did not watch it when I was in theaters or anything. I wasn't ever really a huge fan of the Predator series because most of the movies
Mm.
suck. You can listen to our you can listen
Movie
to our
commentary for
movie
more.
commentaries on those. Yeah. But I think the first time I watched it was for Christmas a few years ago. I asked
Hmm.
my family to get me. I was really into the Alien franchise, so I was like, I should probably watch these movies because they're kind of tangentially related to the Alien
Mm-hmm.
franchise. They've been retconned out of existence from that franchise in particular, but
What?
we've talked
Rude.
about this before. But anyway, um,
Probably. Oh, I mean, I remember.
but yeah, so pretty sure I asked them to get this for me for Christmas. There's like a 2-pack of both Alien versus Predator and Alien versus Predator Requiem. And so I watched them for the first time probably like 4 or 5 years ago. Thought they were thought this one especially was trash. We'll get to the next one. That one's kind of trash too, but in a different way. But so I think I've only ever watched this movie just that one time before watching it for this podcast because I just yeah. So, getting to the background of this movie, do you have anything, Emily? I always like to
Absolutely
ask.
not.
Well,
I mean, okay, I do.
okay, please share. Please share.
So when I was in middle school, in math class, we had to write a paper about how the pyramids were built and say the like most
Mm.
common theories. So, mind you, this was when we were learning how to like write introductory paragraphs that were 2 sentences long in language arts class. And while this was for the teacher who told me I was smarter than her later in the year. Um, the math teacher who told me that I was smarter than her. So I wrote my rough draft, and I wrote about how primarily we were focused on the Egyptians, how the Egyptians built the pyramids and all of that stuff. And she gave me like terrible grades on the grammar part of it for my rough draft and was like, you can't write a 2 sentence introductory paragraph. I was like, we literally just learned this in language arts class. I'm trying to put stuff to use. Um, didn't say anything about the fact that I gave the only reasonable explanation for the building of the pyramids and how they were constructed that I knew of
Mm-hmm.
or could find. And then when I turned in the final paper, she knocked me off because I didn't put forward the option that maybe the aliens built the pyramids. And I was
Uh,
like I didn't even realize the racism built into that, but I was just like,
yeah.
that is not a reasonable theory for how the pyramids were built. So I've got baggage around that particular part of this movie.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up because I forgot to include it in the notes. Or maybe this is better for deep dive going into
I
the
mean, we're talking about it in
background
deep
for
dive,
this.
so just saying.
Yeah, so maybe I'll just put it there. But this did come out around the time that the History Channel started to air a lot of those ancient alien conspiracy stuff. So I feel like this was kind of influenced by that wave of false history. So that
Mm,
part is definitely background. And I'm sorry about that, teacher, because that's trash. It's not true
yeah,
at all what the teacher said.
yeah.
Um, but anyway, so the concept of Alien versus Predator, of merging these two franchises together, started as a limited comic book crossover in 1989, Alien versus Predator,
Mm,
published by Dark Horse Publishing, which publishes a lot of similar things. They also have a Superman versus Alien comic books limited run series
mm,
and stuff. So all kind of stuff. But it was really popular and expanded to books, video games, etc. Um, there's a very popular book series written in the early 90s called the Michiko Noguchi Saga, started by Steve and Stephanie Perry, about basically a futuristic setting where Mashiko is the main character and she encounters this world. Like she's kind of like Ripley era, like way in the future,
Mm-hmm.
hundreds of years in the future. She encounters this
Mm-hmm.
planet where aliens live, and the predators come in and fight the aliens and stuff. And the book follows her through several.
Hmm.
The book series follows her through several encounters with aliens and predators. So it's hugely popular in the 90s. Because of this popularity, though. This was hinted at in the film Predator 2 when an alien skull is seen among the trophies that the
Yeah.
alien ship has. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
I remember
the
that.
French, yeah, the franchise. Oh, I should have said this earlier. But if you want, we're only covering the Alien franchise on the main feed. The Predator franchise in its entirety
Mm-hmm.
is being covered on Patreon as movie commentaries. So we'll probably cover them as like full episodes at one point down the road. But for now, you can catch up on all of those things. Um,
Mm-hmm.
but anyway, so both franchises are owned by 20th Century Fox, now just 20th Century, since it's a subsidiary of Disney now. So it was put into development in the early 90s, but it was paused when Alien Resurrection went into production. And then that movie came out, and we all saw how great that movie was. um, so after that movie kind of flopped, the 20th Century decided to kind of re look at it, especially because this was around the same time that Freddy versus Jason was being produced finally by
Mm.
New Line and stuff. So it seemed like a good time to do this. So
Mm-hmm.
Paul W. Anderson, who at this point had just come off the heels of the first Resident Evil film, which was hugely popular for Screen Gems, he approached 20th Century Fox with the script treatment and his idea for how to do the film. They loved it. So after he finished his work of script writing for Resident Evil 2 Apocalypse, he then started this and directed it. Um, it was nominated for the Razzie Awards. If you're not familiar with those, they are kind of like a joke version of the Oscars. And this was nominated for the worst prequel or sequel film for the year, and it
Wow.
lost to Scooby Doo 2 Monsters Unleashed. And then
Hmm.
there is a unreleased animated series called AVP Annihilation that was created for
Ooh.
Netflix a few years ago. It was
Oh.
finished, the production is done, but when Disney bought 20th Century Studios, they quietly
Mm.
just um, put it into the Disney vault, and there's no clue if it's ever going to be released or not. But that was supposedly an
Rude.
adaptation of the Mashigo Noguchi saga of books. So I'm really
Hmm.
hopeful that it will someday see the light of day, since that was such a popular book series.
Yeah.
Hopefully it'll
That's a
be
whole
better than this.
Yeah, that's a whole thing though in that they were talking about during the strikes and stuff is the ways that companies will do all the filming and all of that stuff or will buy the rights to adapt something and then either do it partway or all the way and then just never release
Hmm.
it or just never even do it.
Yeah.
And then it's this play for tax write-offs, right? Because they can write it off if they
Hmm.
never release it, and then they only have to pay the people the initial pay. They don't have any royalties, not
Yes.
royalties, but like
Residuals
um,
and stuff.
residuals. Yeah, they don't have any residuals to pay. But then that means that people who are actors who rely on residuals and who are part of the production
Yes.
team and all of that stuff don't get paid what they deserve for the work that they did because their pay is dependent on the residuals.
And all that 100% yes. And also there's another piece that commonly happens in franchises too, which is if a company will usually only have franchise rights for a certain number of years after the last film they produced in that
Mm,
franchise. So if they want to keep the rights, but they
they
don't
have
want
to produce
to
another
put the
film.
money into making a huge film, they will sometimes make a film, not intended for a wide release or anything, but just basically a placeholder so they can retain the rights for longer. And so we've seen this, especially in a lot of
Ooh.
Marvel movies. And it's the reason why Sony, who owns the
Oh.
Spider-Man franchise, keeps putting
Keeps
out these
making
trash,
Spider.
shitty Spider-Man
Ugh.
villain movies so they can keep the rights to Spider-Man. So that's why they had that gross Morbius movie come out a few years ago. Like all these Spider-Man villain movies, just so they can keep the rights to the characters, even though they're not even using Spider-Man right now and letting Marvel release that character. So
Rude.
right, all the ways capitalism is awful.
I do love the like Miles Morales Spider-Man
Yes,
series that's
those are
happening,
great.
but that
Those are
feels
great. Although,
disconnected to Spider-Man.
but there's, I mean, this they're not really disconnect because they just because the second one, Across the Spider Verse, they had characters from the live action Spider Man appear and stuff in there. But anyway,
They did?
um,
I don't remember
yeah.
that. I just rewatched it. Hmm.
But and also if you watch Spider Man, was the most recent one Far From Home? Is that the one that came out a
I
few
think
years
so.
ago?
Yeah.
The live action one that also references the Across the Spider Verse because both are about the multiverse of Spider Man. So they both kind of
True.
feature characters from different franchises. But anyway, oh, that is a huge aside to the AVP movies we are talking about. Um, do you have a one sentence summary for this movie?
Yes. The enemy of her enemy is her bestie.
Love it. My initial one is space slasher versus space action to keep on with my space theme of the season. But
Mm-hmm.
I also have penis heads versus vulva mouths. So
I think I definitely have the shorter one because you gave two and
yes.
combined they are longer. So shots for me.
Yep.
I think every time
So
we
I
get
guess
shots for that, whether it's for me or for you.
yep. Doesn't matter. Just take shots.
Mm-hmm.
Responsibly, friends.
Responsibly.
So I,
Could be water.
yeah, it could be water.
I'll take a
It
shot
could
of a
be,
teeny tiny peep flavored candy.
yeah, there you go. Are they actually peep flavored? Do they taste like marshmallow grossness?
A little? A little? Yeah.
I think peeps
They
might be
look
my
more like
least favorite
Pez's.
candy. Oh, they
I didn't
do.
get any peeps this year.
You like them? I think I
Usually
just
I
hate
get.
marshmallow in general.
Oh, I like marshmallow. Usually I get peeps in a like Easter package or basket or something. I don't like go out and buy them.
Hmm.
But yeah. Anyway, so
Anyway,
this through this film
yeah,
rolling,
let's
rolling, rolling through the film. That was
love
a
it.
good one.
Go, Tina Turner. Um,
Mm-hmm.
so I guess I'll start. The ways that this movie tries to be a prequel to the Alien franchise, I hate. So this one week, right off the bat, we are introduced to the Wayland Corporation, which we know
Mm-hmm.
turns into Wayland Yutani in the Alien world. And we
Mm-hmm.
have Charles Bishop Wayland, played by Lance Henriksen, um, as the head of that company. So to
Mm-hmm.
me, Lance Henriksen has previously appeared in the Alien franchise as the character Bishop, and then as the guy that supposedly created Bishop in
Mm-hmm.
Alien 2, Aliens, and Alien 3, Alien Cubed, respectively. But in this, apparently, Charles Bishop Wayland was the head of the Wayland Corporation. So then, why the hell are they basing an android off of the dead guy of their company from 500 years ago?
Maybe it's
That
like
to me makes no
Foundation and
sense.
they're all clones.
Ah, there we go. There you go. That makes more sense than whatever this trash you're trying to do. So I like your
Mm-hmm.
idea.
Mm-hmm.
Fixing their trash for them.
Or maybe it's like Colonel Sanders, where he wrote
Ah,
into the
so
contract that you always have to have an image of him. Or was it Wendy? One of the two. That's why they turned it into a
yeah,
cartoon. Because after he
makes
died.
sense.
Yeah. Those are
Love
my
it.
ideas
Love it.
about how that is feasible. Yeah. Also, I love the beginning of it with Lex climbing up the ice falls. It's gorgeous and fantastic.
Yeah.
And also the anticlimactic like arrival at the top, and there's like this fancy business guy there in a suit with a helicopter, and it's just like, ugh, that's anticlimactic. But also, how did she not see them arriving?
Right.
I can hear a helicopter out my window. I just did. I didn't see it, but I heard it.
So many
I'm just
questions.
saying.
Helicopters are really loud.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Um, Also, I like how right off the bat, we speaking of Lex, we learned that she is the only competent person, and we learned this pretty quickly.
Yep.
Which
Again, a
makes to
smart
me,
woman being ignored.
yep. So to me, that means she's the new Ripley, I guess, in
That's what
this
I
one, because
interpreted. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah. That's I was like, if you rush this, people will get hurt and may die. Yep. But please, let's ignore her. Ignore her cautions. Yeah.
I will say
Also,
though that I am a little
mhm,
off put by her name being Lex. I mean, I'm sure it's short for like Alexis or something like that, but
mhm.
like that always makes me think of Lex Luthor, the Superman villain. So like, I'm like, is
Mhm.
she supposed to be the villain the first time I watched it because her name is Lex? But no.
Oh,
Anyway,
yeah, no, I just went with Lex. Like, I had friend slash classmate slash soccer mate um, in school named Lexi. So Lex was like, oh, yeah. Once I figured out the names, I'm terrible with names. So it took me a while to figure out who was named what. But um, yeah. Also, I like that the guys are like, I've got kids. You've got kids. We've got to survive for the kids. It's like, you clearly don't know the horror tropes. Like, you
right,
think kids are a good enough reason to survive, but they're not.
right,
Have fun.
and also people are
Also,
allowed to being a parent is an important thing, just to be clear, but like you're
mhm,
also as a parent allowed to have agency and reasons for life and living and stuff beyond just your kids, especially if
mhm,
you're a woman, since Hollywood likes to say if you are a woman you need
mhm.
to live solely for your kids and that's it.
Which, like, I did appreciate that it was the men having this conversation.
Yeah.
But yeah. Also, why are we working so hard to save Wayland? He's gonna die anyway. He's holding you back and making it harder for you to survive. Why don't you just go ahead and let him die? It is, in fact, as we have
Right.
discovered with, other deaths of billionaires, one of the best things you could do for the environment and world. So,
Right.
Predator,
So much
thank you for your
this.
service.
Right. Right. So much that. Ugh.
Ugh.
And like he's so incompetent too. And like so
Mm-hmm.
they keep so many of them die because they're trying to keep this one asshole alive. Whereas if they
Mm-hmm.
just left him behind, so many more people could have likely survived this film.
Yep. Ugh.
I also love the Lex Scar team up, and yes, the Predator's name is referred to in the script as Scar because he has a scar. Very descriptive. Thank you.
Are you sure it's not
Um,
because his brother is Mufasa?
that may be. So the predator we see in the beginning who dies is probably Mufasa, yes. And then Scar
Mm-hmm.
outlives him, but then dies by the end too. Because
Mm-hmm.
Simba is Lex? I don't know. Anyway,
Or is Simba
the predator? Or the alien? The
the new
xenomorph?
baby,
Ooh, yeah.
the Predalien, or
Now I want
whatever?
to see a cut of that scene where the Predalien bursts out of the xenomorph with the "Na Zavenya Mamalicia"
Yeah,
most
it's
background to it.
yeah, right. And get a little lift up to the
Hmm,
show up.
hmm.
Yeah, yeah. Also, it was so very obviously a trap. This whole thing
Yeah.
that was
Hmm,
obvious
hmm.
from the start. Literally, somebody drilled your way in for you. And
Yep.
speaking of the Predalien, I was like, I thought the Predator got impregnated, right? Because we saw the Predator had the mask off, and then the alien like jumped, and then it cut away, and I was like, oh. And now I
Look
was
at
right.
you catching up on your horror tropes. I'm so proud.
Thank you. I'm very proud of myself too.
You're getting to the point where I think we are almost ready to watch the Scream franchise, since the Scream franchise purposefully comments on and makes fun of the horror tropes. So I think it'll be
Mm.
fun to get there.
Maybe
It's a
that'll
very
be the
meta
eighth.
franchise.
Maybe that'll be
Yeah.
the eighth season, and then we can also
Right now
watch
we're
that one. There's one where like everything is silent. We can watch that movie too. The Scream franchise.
mm,
Huh?
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
I'm a little mad at the Scream franchise right now though, so I'm not
Oh.
sure if I'll be ready to cover it by 8. They let go of one of their actors for vocally supporting Palestine. So they let go of her, fired
Oh.
her from the franchise, and then Jenny Ortega, who's the other actor. Um, sorry, I got distracted. But anyway, Jenny Ortega, who is the other actor, spoke out in support of her, and then was also let go. And so they're trying to redo now. Scream
Oh.
8 is going to like have a whole new cast. It sounds like, and it just sounds like such a mess. So
Yeah,
I'm a little mad
I'm
at
not
them.
with that. Maybe we could do Speed instead. It still has the S and the E.
Wait, I feel like after our Star Wars franchise and after our Witch franchise, depending on which franchise we do, we really need to get back to like a solid horror franchise. Because
Okay,
even
I would like to
Alien
point
is
out
like,
that Aliens is a solid horror franchise, and I thought Witch was a solid horror franchise.
well, there's
Or is
no
that
Witch
just a
franchise. So like we were thinking about
Oh,
doing
that's
like
just a
Halloween
movie?
Town as a franchise for that,
Yeah.
which is not
Yeah.
horror. So all
Yeah.
horror light, but we'll see. We'll see. We have time to
We
think
haven't yet.
about it.
There are lots of, there have to be other Witch franchises we
The
could do.
only 2 Witch franchises that there are 3 Witch franchises. No, 4. There are 4 Witch franchises I know of. 2 of them I don't think would work well because they're in the found footage. So Blair Witch Project and the Paranormal Activity franchises are both found footage. So I'm not sure how they would work for theology stuff because there's not much
I don't know
plot. You're
what that
just like,
means.
it's where
Found
they
footage.
pretend that like everything's recorded on a home video kind of thing.
Oh.
So it's like you
Mm-hmm.
find the footage and it's allegedly real footage and stuff like that.
Mm.
That's so they tend not to have much plot. They just because
Oh.
they're like home video kind of stuff. So
Hmm.
I don't know if we covered those. We might, but those feel like more like suited
Bonus.
for movie commentaries than like full
Mm. Yeah.
episodes. And then the other 2 franchises I know of that have witches in them. One is Dario Argento's Mother's Trilogy, which we've already covered the first one, Suspiria, and the other
Mm-hmm.
one is Halloween Town. So it's like
Mm.
the only kind of scary one is the Three Mothers Trilogy, but there's only 2 movies of that trilogy left. So it
Oh.
wouldn't be like enough to sustain one. So
Yeah. But we could do
which is yeah,
one of
which
those
is
as movie commentary, like a combo. Hmm.
yeah. So we have before the end of this season, do not worry. We will figure out it because we always like to announce what movies we're covering for the next season in a
Mm-hmm.
retrospective, but we haven't fully
Mm-hmm.
figured it out yet.
Yeah.
But anyway, back to Alien versus Predator. No witches here,
Mm-hmm.
as far as I can tell.
Yeah. That's the other half of this season.
Yep. I
Anyway,
think the
also,
Predalien's cool at the end.
yes, very cool. Also, there's no way that Lex survives that long in that cold. She's not Katza. This is not Graceling. There is no way that she can like she would have died way sooner from how cold it was. It's Antarctica, people.
Yep. And also, throughout the entire movie, while they are like very bundled up in cold stuff, they do not seem like
At
they
all
are
cold.
at all cold.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. They can use their fingers fine and yeah.
Yep. Even if this is summer in Antarctica, still. it would
Mhm.
be to
Which
the
it's,
point that,
and even so, it's probably not summer because there's a big storm that comes through.
yeah, and we also see like night, so that wouldn't happen
Mm-hmm.
in summer
Yeah.
in Antarctica. When we
Yeah.
cover The Thing, that's another movie. The Thing supposedly takes place in winter in Antarctica, but we see the sun. So I just think
Mm.
that people who make
It's
horror movies
almost
in
like they
Antarctica
didn't
don't
care
really
about
know,
realistic
right?
bodies.
Anyway, are you ready to get into our deep dive?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Start us off, please.
So, racism, eh? Um,
So much in
what
both franchises.
right? I mean, just like how the predator is like the predator has dreads, and that in and of itself is like big scary predator.
Yeah, we haven't talked about the Predator on the main feed yet, only on
We
Patreon. So
haven't.
yeah, the
Yeah.
Predator has been from the beginning racialized, has been coded to be black with the dreads, with the size,
Yep.
with the skin color
Yeah.
being a darker skin color, stuff like
Mm-hmm.
that. Yes.
Coded to be black and to reinforce the
Black
stereotypes about
stereotypes.
black men in particular being big
Yep.
and scary and
Mm-hmm.
predators.
Yep. Predators
Also
preying on people.
weird. Also the like I had and I literally like while watching it was like, wait, is this a here's how the aliens are the ones that actually built the pyramids thing? And it
Uh huh.
is. And I was
Yes.
I
So yeah. So
and it's not even a good explanation. It's not even a good explanation, right? Like this one pyramid in Antarctica has like the design on one side from Machu Picchu and on another side from Egypt and it's just like
yep.
no. No.
So um the whole aliens built the pyramid theory began with Erich
Racism.
von began with Erich von Daniken, who is a Swiss dude who was born during the period of the Third Reich and thought of aliens as
Oh.
these light-skinned Aryan people who would come down and help all these black and brown people build pyramids. And so he wrote this book called Chariots of the Gods that came out in 1968 or around there. And so he was like the person who started prominently, who first kind of brought this theory to prominence. And it was
Mm-hmm.
from the beginning a very, not just saying that black and brown people were incapable of high tech machinery and building really high tech buildings and stuff like that, showing advanced building skills. That in itself is racist, but also to say that
Mm-hmm.
the aliens who taught them how to build it were white, light skinned people.
Right? Yeah, I was like,
So yeah, Ross and Carrie do this. We've had Ross on the podcast for our, what episode was he on for? I'm forgetting.
Jesus
Oh,
camp.
for Jesus Camp. Yeah, thank you. For our Jesus Camp
We should
episode, you
have
can go
had
back
them
and
on
listen to
for
that.
this episode.
Right? Because
I didn't even
they've
think of it.
covered annually. There's this aliens in the desert symposium that is full of pseudoscience that they go to, and they cover all the pseudoscience and bullshit and racism out of that. So you can go back and listen to some of their episodes on that too for more context about the bullshit of the aliens building the pyramids shit.
Mm-hmm.
So racist, so gross.
Yeah.
But this movie does seem to show like some of the interesting stuff, like it's tied in with the racist aliens building the pyramid, but also there seems to be creating this religion for the predators that I am very interested in. And so I love that the predators have this initiation rite and baptism of sorts where they use the alien acidic blood to mark themselves with a sign, kind of like marked
Mm-hmm.
with the sign of the cross, although this isn't a cross. It's kind of like the
It
tau
is like
cross
a
that they mark
Jesus cross,
themselves.
like the one
Yeah,
that
the
they are
tau
actually
cross, the
crucified
T.
with. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Um, so they mark themselves with that. And then pyramid shapes are filled with the scriptural writing passing down the stories. They seem to wear and use ritualistic battle garb and weapons that are not just
Mm-hmm.
the weapon. Some of the weapons are like the high tech stuff they used to hunt with to kill, but some
Mm-hmm.
of them just seem to have more ritualistic purposes and are not actually as deadly, like the weird scythe thing and stuff like that. And the
Mm-hmm.
spear do not seem to be as meant for killing as much as it is for ritual, although
Yeah.
it functions
Kind
as
of like
both.
lightsabers for Jedis.
Yeah, yeah. And then I kind of love the spear of Longinus metaphor that happens in this. So when he uses the spear to kill the phallus mother with it, alien mother.
Mm.
So if our listeners don't know what the spear of Longinus is, the spear of Longinus is supposedly the spear. Longinus was the name of the soldier who, in legend. Of course, none of this is actual written down in the biblical accounts. We don't know the names of any of these people. But the spear that
Mm-hmm.
pierces Jesus' side when he's being crucified was pierced by
Oh.
a supposedly pierced by a soldier named Longinus. And the spear of Longinus has long been like fragments of it and stuff used in reliquaries around the world of Catholic churches and stuff, and it's said to have special properties, healing properties, magical properties that can like help bring about victory and all that in wars and all that stuff. So it's supposedly a very like important relic for those who believe in relics and reliquaries and stuff like that.
Hmm.
So the fact that the spear of all the weapons is the one that finally saves the day is, I thought, was telling for this.
Yeah, that's interesting. I did not know that. So I appreciate the extra knowledge.
Yeah, yeah.
Also the like the other piece of like the pyramid and religion stuff is this ritual sacrifice or predator trophies, and like how much are we kind of amalgamating all indigenous people into people who engage in ritual sacrifice by
Yeah.
the way that this was portrayed. And like, yes, ritual sacrifice has happened in the past in a lot of different cultures and religious traditions and all of that stuff. And it has not happened everywhere, and has not happened the same everywhere. And it like there's just so much racism built into how we say what is ritual sacrifice and what is not ritual sacrifice, because I think if we're talking about ritual sacrifice, there's a very valid argument to be made that war is ritual sacrifice,
Yeah,
right?
exactly.
Like the ways that we engage and offer up. I mean, essential workers were ritually
Mm-hmm.
sacrificed, right? Like the ways, and we're going to talk about it in our new season of Nerds at Church, because we're talking about superheroes and kind of unpacking and deconstructing what it means to be a hero and what we do with our heroes in this country
Mm-hmm.
and world, which is largely justify their deaths. Um, but
Yep.
like, yeah, so I just was like, oh, the racism. That was my biggest, that
Yeah.
was my big thing with this movie. That was the thing that I really didn't like, is like the whole intro, like setup for it that is just like steeped in racism.
Right.
So,
And there's this weird scene. I think I commented on it when we are watching through, where the one archaeologist guy starts telling the story about like what happened in the past, but he's not getting it based off. He's just like making it up based off of the evidence that he has put together. He's like, "Oh, I think this is what happened," and tells it as if it actually happened, and we
as if
see it
he
on
can
film as if it
as if it
actually
takes him
happened.
like 30 seconds to read the glyphs. Yeah.
Right, it's so such nonsense. But to your point though about like the war being ritual sacrifice, one of my professors in college, I did this wholesome independent study on him about with his name was Dr. Ward, and I did a whole independent study on um the genre of uh, what is it called, epic poetry, the entire genre of
Mm.
that. So
Ooh.
starting with books like Homer's Odyssey
Mm-hmm.
and the Iliad, and going all the way through like Milton's Paradise and stuff. So like the specific, not the way we think of epic as a popular term, but like the
Yeah.
actual specific genre of epic stuff. And
Mm-hmm.
for my final paper in there, he and I were talking throughout the whole thing, and one of the themes that kept coming up is the epic hero as like a character
Mm-hmm.
and what it means to be a hero. So tying in with we were talking about nerds at church, and that when I was preparing for my final paper, he and I were talking about it, and I ended up writing my paper on like the way that the term hero has shifted in epic literature and how that's different from the way we understand it today. And we started talking about the military as heroes, the way, and this was, I was taking this in 2000, was it 2008? So, oh no, 2007. So this was during George W. Bush's presidency, and the way that the people who are fighting for freedom in Iraq and Afghanistan were all heroes. And so he pointed out, he's like,
Mm-hmm.
watch the State of the Union. Democrats will never clap for anything George W. Bush says unless he starts talking about the military and talks about heroes. Then everybody stands up and claps. So there's this American
Mm-hmm.
ritualistic understanding of the way that the military is a special class of people that deserve
Mm-hmm.
honor from both sides. And that's changed a little bit under the Republican Party under Trump and stuff, where the
Mm-hmm.
military sometimes is now scapegoated and stuff and seen as bad by certain aspects of the Republican Party. But for a very long time, and still by and large, most of the Republican Party and the Democratic Party, the one thing they will agree on is calling soldiers heroes, which is so gross to me. So,
Yeah.
I'm not saying
But
that people who are sent off to war and stuff don't deserve extra treatment stuff because of the way the
but
military
part of
industrial complex preys on
yeah.
poor people and all that stuff, but
Yeah.
just the way that they are talked about and honored in a really weird way in our
Well,
society.
and part of that ritualizing of it and the verbal and visible honoring of it is a way of like mitigating guilt because we
Yeah.
don't take care of people. We don't provide for people when they come back. When veterans come
Mm-hmm.
back and need mental health care and need physical health care and need support, we don't give it to them. And like the amount of time it takes us to prepare people to go to war and to enact violence and the amount of work
Mm-hmm.
we have done as a country to make it easier for people to kill and then they can be back at home within like 48 hours.
Yep.
No help processing, no help with reentry. Like there are a lot of different cultures and indigenous cultures in this land that had rituals for when those who fought, their warriors, would come back of stripping them of their clothing and washing them outside of the camp. And it helps
Yeah.
them shift back into what it means to be part of the community
Yeah.
and to keep the violence out of the community. But we don't do that. We just say, all right, have fun.
Mm-hmm.
We've probably given you PTSD. Good luck with it.
Right. And the way race also, so the ways that the country has honored veterans in the past tends to also be
Mm-hmm.
split along racial lines. For instance, after World War II, we see a lot of, you probably are familiar with the all the literature and stuff after World War II about the rise of suburbs around cities because veterans coming back from World War II were given huge money given money to go into
Handouts. Yep.
housing and into the suburbs, but those were given to the white soldiers, not the black soldiers, and stuff like that. Or if they were given to black soldiers, it was done unevenly.
Yeah.
So all that stuff.
Yep.
Listen to Nerds at, look at me making a Nerds at Church reference now. Listen to the Nerds at Church episode with Adam Dowd. We talk about Veterans for
Ooh.
Peace. I was guest
That's because
co-host
you're
on
the
that
guest
episode.
co-host for
So
that.
that's why it's fresh in my
That
mind.
is what I
But
didn't even think of. Yep.
but that was a really good episode where we don't talk about all this stuff, but we talk about a lot of it and the ways in which veterans are not supported and stuff in this country with Adam
Yeah.
Dowd, who is a veteran and also works for the Veterans for Peace campaign. So, or volunteers for that campaign.
Yep. and we will link to it in the show notes.
Yep, yep. Other horror tropes, though, or just film tropes, but specifically horror tropes beyond like racism and all that stuff. I know you have
Oh my
some
gosh.
that you picked up on.
So we were watching this, Pace, Susanna, and I were watching this together, and Susanna was like, and I was like, oh, they definitely could hook up. And I don't even remember who the character is, but it's the character who was like, I bring a gun everywhere just so we don't need it.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, well, now you're gonna die because of it.
Yep.
But then when that character actually died, Susanna was like, kill the lesbians. Because that character and Lex would have made a super hot couple. And they keep killing all of the queer characters, like all of the queer characters. I mean, admittedly, they kill like everybody except for the main human, but
Mm-hmm.
yeah,
Yeah.
I was, yeah.
At
You need to
least.
just stop killing all the queers.
Yeah.
This is why I like. This is part of why I so appreciate what has been happening in Black horror in particular, and the flipping of scripts where the white people are clearly the danger and the ones that need to not live.
Yeah.
Because that also, like, in doing that, they're also bringing in more queer people, and there's more chance of queer people surviving and stuff.
Right. And that being I not saying you think this, Emily, but for our listeners, that being something that has happened in black horror from its inception in the
Mm-hmm.
1950s, but especially with black exploitation horror in the 1970s, with things like Blackie and stuff. Go out and listen to our, or even buy the book and then listen to our episode. Read the book and then
Yeah.
listen to our episode of The Black Guy Dies First, with Mark D. Harris and Pamela Armines Coleman.
No.
Uh,
With
Robin R.
Robin
means
R.
colon.
Means
I don't
Coleman
know where Pamela
and
came from. Robin R.
Mark
means colon and
H.
Mark's
Harris.
Harris. Yes, thank you. But that's such a good book, and that was such a good conversation.
Yeah.
And that is one of the cool things. Horror from the beginning has always, not always, but horror has consistently been a genre where you can kind of pull these threads out and play with them. So like even one
Mm-hmm.
of the first horror film, like this silent horror film called The Freaks, or black and white horror film called The Freaks in the 1930s, was really makes this statement about disability and says that able-bodied
Mm.
people are the scary people, not the disabled people, the way it's commonly perceived.
Which
So
is
like
real.
horror always, yeah, exactly. So it's like horror from its inception as a genre has always kind of encountered these themes, and used horror as a way to like flip the tropes. And of course then we also have horror movies like this where it just follows the
Mm-hmm.
tropes exactly. So it's kind of both end. But I do love that we can, even Frankenstein, widely considered to be one of the first horror novels and sci-fi novels, the villain in there is not the monster, it's the white guy who created the
Yeah.
monster. So
Yeah. Yeah.
one of the many reasons I love horror.
Yeah. And I also thought it was interesting, right? Because the protagonist, who is the new Ripley, right, is a black woman, and
Mm-hmm.
she was right about like pick the side of the hunter. If
Mm-hmm.
this is a hunter and prey thing, and the aliens are the prey, pick the side of the hunter. Help the hunter. You'll be fine. Whatever. Um, and that's just so interesting to me, because
Mm-hmm.
I was like, I don't want you to pick either of them, right? But then also
Mm-hmm.
she does, and she lives, and like, they become besties. They
Right.
And like then the predator arms Lex and like makes the alien into like a shield and a spear for her, and I just, yeah.
Yeah. And this is at least the second time that I can remember. But as I'm saying this, I think I'm realizing something about this too. But I think this is the second time where we've seen the predators team up with a human and acknowledge a human's warrior capabilities at the end. Because in Predator 2,
Mm.
we also had at the very end the predator ship came down and they gave Danny Glover the gun. But I'm
Mm-hmm.
also realizing though that that this adds to the coding of the predators as black, because the 2 times that this happened, the final person was a black person who made it to the end, and they're the ones that get honored by the predators.
Yeah. Well, and Prey, right?
Well,
And
Prey,
that
did
was
she get
not a
honored
black
by the
person, that was
predator at the
indigenous.
end?
I
She,
mean, she
I don't.
beat the predator.
Yeah, but that happens in all the movies where one person beats a predator. But do they have
Mm,
a predator come down and bestow upon that person a gift? Because that only
maybe.
happens in this movie and in Predator 2, I think. I don't
Okay.
remember it
I
happening in
don't
Prey.
remember. I only saw it the one time. Yeah. I
Because
don't remember for
Arnold
sure.
saves the day in the first one, and then, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And he doesn't get honored by the predator.
Hmm. Yeah. Yeah.
I'm looking up quick.
Also, there, while you're looking that up, there was a
She
moment
doesn't
where
get honored.
okay. There was a moment though when the predator's like, "Okay, we're done," and takes off the helmet, and I was like, and then of course, like, that's when they get impregnated and stuff, and I was like, "Bet you wish you had waited a bit longer to take off your helmet."
Yep.
Um, but yeah,
Also,
I
though,
did.
like,
Yeah, it was just so interesting for the way that Lex did it.
the heat sensing of the
Yeah.
predators' masks in this makes no damn sense. They're in Antarctica. Everything should be freezing except for the people, but everything, whenever it showed the heat vision, was like regular ambient room temperature of the majority of the world. Like, it never showed anything being super cold. And I'm like, this, come on, people.
Yeah.
It
Well, and
makes no
even
damn
like the
sense.
people were too warm, right? They shouldn't have
Right?
been that warm. They should have been much colder with like their extremities, maybe room temperature, and then the
Yeah.
core of their body warmer. But like
Yeah.
their nose is not going to be warm. It's going to be
Right?
cold.
And
Yeah.
how did nobody get frostbite by the end of this movie? Like, it just makes no sense.
I mean,
Do
because they were
better,
all dead except for
Hollywood.
Lex. But that was my point about Lex. Is like
Yeah,
she should be missing some fingers and toes.
right?
Fingers at least. Yeah. Like she's not even
So,
wearing her jacket at the end. She's out in the middle of
right?
Antarctica, not wearing a jacket. Yeah, it's ridiculous. Ridiculous.
It's probably -30, but it's fine. I don't need to wear a jacket for that.
Yeah. Never mind the wind chill. Anywho.
Anywho, anything else for the deep dive?
I think those are all the things that I had for
Yeah,
the deep dive.
there's really not much religion in this movie aside from the turning indigenous religion into some sort of alien thing. Um,
Yeah. You know, aside from the racism y things about.
yeah.
Yep. So, Pace, rate the film. Out of 10
Don't we need
jazz
to do our lore
hands.
first?
Oh yeah, we do. I was gonna do that, and then you were talking about something, and I got distracted, and I skipped. Alien lore. We didn't have any AI in this, but we did have the
Yeah.
original origin of the AI, which is a whole other thing. Um,
Yeah.
so predators can get impregnated by aliens,
Hmm.
and predators built the pyramids.
And also, this move apparently predators and aliens or xenomorphs exist in the same universe in at
Mm-hmm.
least this film's continuity,
Mm-hmm.
which I think is cool, kind of cool. We also learn for the alien for this continuity of the Alien franchise that the Wayland Company started in the 20th century at some point, and some point in the future will merge with Yutani to become the mega evil corporation. It's already evil here, but becomes even more so in
Mm-hmm.
theory. And this is probably where Wayland Yutani first learned about the xenomorphs in this movie, which is why they're
Mm-hmm.
so keen on getting them when they encounter them in the future.
Yeah.
And I can also see why the Alien franchise retconned this shit when they came out with Prometheus, which we'll cover in a few weeks.
I mean, I'm going to hold my I'm going to reserve my opinions until I actually see Prometheus because it could still be terrible. I don't know. So, yeah. Yeah. There's some yeah.
oh, Prometheus is terrible, but in better ways, I think. We'll get there.
Prometheus is terrible, but better terrible. This is the life of horror genres.
Right?
Okay. Okay.
Right.
So base. Now how many out of 10 alien jazz hands? What are you rating it?
Woo! I think we even got. I think the Mama Queen gave jazz hands in one scene in this too, so I'm glad we got the jazz hands
Okay.
back. Um, I'd rate this 2 jazz hands.
Wow.
1 jazz hand for each time I've seen this movie, and I'm sure it'll probably stay at 2. I don't think it'll go up because I don't think I'll see it again. Hopefully.
Oh,
I mean, I might. I'll never say never. Like
I was
for
gonna
I
say
love
your
around
pace.
Halloween and stuff. Yeah, I like to just do franchise marathons and stuff. So I'll probably see it again. But I love watching the Alien franchise and skipping these ones. um, my favorite kill, I think, I'm going to go with uh Charles Bishop Wayland, just because he's an asshole, and I'm glad he finally gets killed. I wish it happened sooner in the movie, and I'm kind of pissed off that everybody keeps trying to keep him alive and dying trying to keep him alive.
Yeah, that was bad. Ridiculous. I have 2 ratings, as is becoming custom. Um, in terms of racism, I rate it a 0. Like that, just like 0, 0, 0, 0, 0. But if it didn't have all the racism, I actually kind of liked it and would give it an 8. Which I
Really?
don't know. I thought it was fun. I like it
Okay.
when women and people of color are the protagonists and win.
Yeah.
Um, I don't know how to like factor those into each other because it doesn't seem fair to be like, therefore I'll give it a 4. Um, yeah. So I'm just gonna give it a 0 and an 8.
Yeah. When it comes to a retrospective, I don't know how that's going to work yet, but that's future pace to figure out. Pace
Yeah.
to figure out. Cool.
And my favorite kill was Waylon. Thank you again, Predator, for helping the world and environment in that way.
Yes.
And I had
Look at
0 jump scares.
woo. Yeah, I'm not sure that I would count like the problem here with our tagline of anything can be horror is that of course this movie is horror because anything can be horror. But if we like stick to like a stricter definition of horror, I'm not sure that I would place this in horror. I'd place it more in action. Um
Interesting.
and it doesn't really
What
and the Predator franchise all along seem most people kind of put that more in the action franchise than horror franchise for Predator. Alien seems to
is
be
it
more in
because
the
there's
middle.
not
But
the like emotional dread and foreboding?
yeah, for me, like for something to be anything can be horror, and the reason I say that is because any any kind of movie can draw on anxiety, foreboding, and dread, and pick up on those,
Mm-hmm.
and you can feel scared for
Mm-hmm.
characters and stuff in any movie. Um, but for movies to like intentionally capitalize that and have that as a running theme throughout, we're supposed to have this sustained feeling of dread. Is
Mm.
how many people would kind of classify horror as a genre, is to have that sustained feeling of dread and worry for the characters. And I don't feel that this has any of that. It just seems to be
Mm.
the human characters exist as an aside. The main characters are the predators and the aliens fighting, and that's why people are coming to the theaters to see them fight. They don't care about the humans. And so
Mm.
it seems to be
Interesting.
much more
I
of an
can see that.
action oriented. We want the alien and predator to face off in like this giant WWE wrestling match is why we're going to the movie, not to feel scared, not to worry
Mm.
about the characters or anything like that.
Interesting.
So
Yeah. All right. I mean, I get it. I do think they could have, like, the plot itself lends itself to horror, and they
yeah,
could
I mean,
have,
there's a lot of
even
like,
in just like the soundtrack, could have made it horror, right? Like
yeah,
the way.
because
the way soundtracks manipulate emotions so easily and so readily, I think it could have made it more horror than it was. But that's not what they were trying to do, right? So
okay. So what's our next movie, Emily?
our next movie is Star Wars Episode 7, The Force Awakens, one of the best in the trilogies of Star Wars. And that will be with special guest Brooke McClain, who we know from
Woo!
the 2016 Ghostbusters episode that we did.
Yay!
Woo.
And in 2 weeks, we'll cover the sequel to this movie, Aliens versus Predator Requiem.
Ugh. I mean, yeah, great creative naming. Uh huh.
I actually kind of like that one, but we'll get there.
Ugh. I mean, the Requiem maybe, but the Aliens versus Predator is just like too much. Too much. They're
Yep.
just like, ugh. Anyway, that is it for our show, folks. Our theme music was by Matt May. Horror Nerds at Church releases seasonally on Thursdays. Please comment, rate, and subscribe to us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. Support us on Patreon and get access to exclusive movie commentary episodes, BooTube episodes, merch discounts, and more bonus content by going to patreon.com/horror nerds at church. Starting at only $5 to sign up, it is cheaper than all of the therapy you will need for befriending a predator. Follow us on social media, Facebook and Instagram at Horror Nerds at Church, and Blue Sky and Twitter at HNACPOD for all the latest updates about upcoming films, news, and other announcements. Until next time, team up with a predator killing your whole group, obviously.
Love it. Also, wear more better clothes for
Close?
Antarctic temperatures.
Yes. Layers, people.